Okay, so I'm going to be talking about locating human remains and recovering human remains in Chapter 6. So usually, we're gonna start with locating human remains. The forensic anthropologist or medical examiner officials participate in searches with law enforcement in finding remains. They are done by rescue teams, including cadaver dogs, which are trained to find decomposition scent. The anthropologist generally does the on site identification of scattered remains and identify whether or not they are human. They also inform the search team when the remains are complete and the search can be discontinued based on what they say. With recovering remains, anthropologists usually work with the medical examiner or law enforcement to recover human remains. The remains are recovered from outdoor scenes. They may lie on the surface or be scattered on the surface or may even be buried. In this case, the archaeological techniques are used to show how the remains are positioned. When dealing with a scene involving buried remains, it requires considerable amount of expertise and effort. When accessing a scene, it has to be well marked and limited. Usually, a grid will be superimposed on an area to be examined extremely well in order to maintain information about the spatial distribution or remains and artifacts within the scene boundaries. The grid can be marked off on the ground or provided with a computerized total station, which is a computerized device that digitally records three-dimensional locations of features and artifacts. So before anything begins on a crime scene, the place has to be entirely photographed. Remains are removed gradually with the position of the skeptical parts and artifacts being recorded before they are removed. During a screening area, the material from the grave and surrounding area will be systematically shifted through a screen to reveal human remains, artifacts, fibers, and associated insects. The next thing they do is clear a staging area for the excavation or uncovering of the grave, which is done with small instruments such as trowels, and brushes, which consist of at least several yards in every direction surrounding the grave. The bushes or saplings are cut and removed unless they are associated with the burial, following with a metal detector, which is done to locate the sources of previous hits and new areas of interest. As soon as the body parts are exposed and photographed, it is important to bag them to prevent the loss of small bones, fingernails, teeth, or other evidence. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the case study. So, a woman in her 20s was killed in New Hampshire. The body was in Maine and buried in a shallow grave. 18 months later, a witness directed investigators to the general search area. The nearly empty grave was found upon a cadaver dog. All of the materials were flagged, mapped, and used by a total station and recovered, most found within 50 feet of the grave. The grave was uncovered by forensic anthropologists to expose the original grave contours, which were diagrammed and photographed. The search then expanded to look for items that might have penetrated the ground floor. They found 3 manipulate inserts along with a ring. They found a large amount of long brown hair. The identification was accomplished by using one of the teeth. They also found a large amount of long light brown hair. All the bone elements which were found had been heavily modified by carnivores, which left mid-shaft fragments of many long bones. The lack of muscularity indicated that the remains were female.